In this video, we'll be talking about the R.E.A.P formula, which we can use on ourselves as well as on our teenagers, so as to inculcate some good communication skills in them. And good communication skills are important because there is a strong link between good communication skills as well as great achievements at work and great achievements in school. So I've created this R.E.A.P formula which we can use on ourselves as well as on our teenagers. So for some of us, the R.E.A.P formula might seem a little bit basic, so it can be a revision for us, whereas for the rest of us, maybe it will be helpful in that sense. So you can go to shikahanuar.com to read the article, or you can just watch this video. The R.E.A.P formula is a simple formula to kickstart your journey to become a good communicator. So R stands for being respectful. So being respectful is a no-brainer. So when we are talking to someone else, it's good to treat everybody else or to treat the other party as a teacher of sorts. So this is how we inculcate respect for another person instantly. We treat another person as someone whom we can learn something from. Everybody has something of value which we can learn from. So if we treat everybody as a teacher of sorts, automatically that person will be placed on an equal level as us, and we will treat that person with respect. And if we are going to view this from a different angle, we can even say that even the nastiest person we know has taught us something in one way or another. Even the nastiest person we know has taught us tolerance, patience, or resilience. So in other words, we can view everybody as teachers, and everybody is an opportunity for us to learn something from. So that is one way for us to automatically respect someone that we are talking to. E stands for empathy. So empathy is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes and being able to feel what it's like to be in that person's situation. So being empathetic is a core skill, or is a core arm of good communication skills. Being empathetic encompasses more than just being able to feel someone else's emotions. Being empathetic means that you know what questions are appropriate to ask, what questions are not appropriate to ask, when is the right time to ask certain questions, when is not the right time to ask certain questions, how to give a negative feedback in a positive way or in an impactful way, so, and many other implications as well. So empathy is not just about being able to understand someone else's emotions. It's a lot more than that. Being empathetic also requires some EQ skills. So this actually takes some practice and takes time to develop. A stands for active listening. So I simplify active listening into two parts. It encompasses or includes paraphrasing and asking questions. So paraphrasing is actually a very common technique used by counselors when we are counseling someone else. And paraphrasing requires, or rather it involves us summarizing another person's story in our own words. So when you want to summarize another person's story or another person's sentence in our own words, it requires us to listen very carefully, listen very attentively, and it also requires us to be very attentive to detail. So the good thing when you do this, when you paraphrase someone else's words, the other person will feel understood. So that is a very important or a very strong component of good communication skills. So the second part of active listening is asking questions. So there are three types of questions that we can ask. Number one is closed-ended questions. So these are the yes and no questions. For example, did you go to work today? Yes or no. These are very simple questions which we try to avoid wherever possible. Number two, we can ask open-ended questions. So for example, what do you think of the food at the new restaurant? That is an example of an open-ended question. Another question you can ask is specific questions. So for example, if someone tells you that, I've registered a business yesterday, so you can ask a specific question. You mentioned that you've started a business yesterday. What's your business niche? So that is an example of a specific question. So the best questions to ask are, in my opinion, open-ended questions and specific questions, because these two questions allow someone to plant their opinions in the answers, and it allows a richer communication experience between you and the other person. So there are two components to active listening. One is paraphrasing and one is asking questions. P stands for positive statements. So it's quite easy for us to pass negative judgment or to criticize something or someone, and that is because our brains tend to focus on the negative aspects of something or someone more often than the positive aspects. And our brain does this because it wants to keep us from harm. It wants to protect us. So we have what scientists call negative bias in our brains. So the thing about positive statements is that when you are an authority figure of sorts, for example, you're a teacher, you're a parent, or you're a boss, and you want to give someone a constructive criticism, according to research, the praise to criticism ratio should ideally be 5:1. So for example, before you give a constructive criticism, you need to affirm the person 5 or 6 times before the criticism comes. So this is the characteristic of high performing teams. For a low performing team, the praise to criticism ratio is 0.36 to 1. So for a low performing team, one constructive criticism is equivalent to 0.36 positive affirmation. So that means there is more criticism than positive feedback. So in order for your team or for your child or for anybody else to be more motivated to work harder or perform better, it's good to affirm them a lot, because human beings are more motivated by affirmations than by nagging or by criticism. So that is one way for parents to motivate their child to behave better or to study harder. We can affirm them when they are doing something right and do less criticizing and less nagging. Similarly, if you are a boss, for example, or if you are an authority figure of sorts, it's good to practice the praise to criticism ratio so that your colleagues are more willing to listen to your opinions and ideas, and there's a more positive environment at work. So a more positive environment and a more obliging colleague will equate to bigger success for you and bigger success for the colleague and everybody in general. So in short, the R.E.A.P formula stands for respectful, empathy, active listening, and positive statements. So this is just an abridged version of what the R.E.A.P is. So if you want to read more about this R.E.A.P formula, which is quite basic to some of us, I'm sure, and quite helpful for some of us as well, I hope. So if you want to read more about it, you can go to my blog, shikahanuar.com. I've elaborated on it a little bit more. Thank you and have a good week.